So if you travel to a foreign country and, you don't speak the language, you usually rely on a translation app, right?
Right. Yeah, you just type in whatever you need.
Exactly. You type in this really complex sentence, and it just spits out the essential functional meaning in the local dialect.
You definitely lose the nuance.
Oh, for sure. You lose the poetry of what you originally wanted to say, but you get the basic point across. I mean, you find the train station. You order the coffee.
Yeah, it distills the information down. It turns it into something actionable for whatever environment you're currently navigating. The complexity is just stripped away in favor of utility.
Right. But that translation process becomes incredibly high stakes when the message you're trying to translate isn't just, where is the train?
Oh, absolutely.
What if it's this massive, complicated emotional truth? And it gets even more challenging when the person you are translating it for is a child.
Because there's no app for that.
No, there's no app. Because you aren't just swapping vocabulary words. You're trying to translate a really harsh adult reality into a language that a developing brain can actually process.
Which, when you think about it, requires you to completely deconstruct your own understanding of the situation.
Right.
You have to mold the information to fit the cognitive architecture of the mind that's receiving it. So it forces you to ask not just what is true, but what is this person developmentally prepared to understand?
And that specific challenge is the foundation of our deep dive today. We want to welcome you to the conversation because today's topic is really delicate, but it's universally relevant.
It really is.
We are unpacking this highly practical but honestly fascinating set of excerpts from a guide. It's titled Explaining Divorce to Children Across Developmental Ages.
And it is incredibly dense.
Yeah, the text provides these exact scripts for parents to use, alongside the underlying psychological reasoning for why those specific words actually work. And the guide breaks these scripts down for 3-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and 9-year-olds.
What makes this material so interesting to me isn't just the subject matter itself, but the precision.
Yeah.
It approaches one of the most volatile emotional conversations a family can ever have with absolute surgical discipline. It treats the child's evolving cognition as the primary variable.
So our mission today is to unpack the psychology behind these very specific word choices. But the thing that immediately stands out in the source text is how radically the core message changes from one age bracket to the next.
It's like a complete pivot every 3 years.
Right. The vocabulary, the tone, the focus shifts entirely.
Yeah.
It's honestly like a masterclass in audience awareness. But before we get into the actual scripts, I do want to challenge the premise slightly.
Okay, go for it.
Is human development really this rigid? Like, does a child just wake up on their 6th birthday and suddenly require a completely different explanation for a family crisis than they did the day before?
Well, no, it's a fair pushback. The ages provided in the text 3, 6, and 9, they aren't hard borders. They're more like representative markers for broader developmental phases. The child's brain obviously doesn't flip a switch overnight.
That would be wild if it did.
Yeah, exactly. But the underlying neural pathways are constantly reorganizing. So the text uses these specific ages to highlight major cognitive leaps.
Like going from physical to emotional.
Exactly. Moving from a purely physical understanding of the world to a highly egocentric causal understanding, and finally to a more systemic relational understanding.
Okay, so the truth of the situation doesn't change, but the vessel receiving it changes shape.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, let's look at the youngest demographic in the text then. At 3 years old, a child's understanding of the world is grounded almost entirely in physical presence, right?
Right, what they can see and touch.
Yeah, so the guide provides this prompt. The 3-year-old asks, why don't they live together anymore?
Notice the phrasing of the child's question there.
Yeah.
They aren't asking about a relationship, they're asking about geography.
Oh, wow, exactly. They don't even use the word divorce. They just notice the physical absence of a parent.
Yes.
And the recommended parent response in the text is, sometimes adults decide they could be kinder or happier living in different homes, but they still love their children very much.
Which is such a carefully constructed sentence.
Right. And the underlying explanation provided for the parent is simply that children at this age need immediate reassurance.
Because the focus here is entirely on the limbic system.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, at 3 years old, the brain is primarily concerned with attachment and basic survival. So if a primary caregiver just leaves the physical space, the toddler's brain doesn't process that as a legal separation.
Right, they don't know what a lease is.
Exactly. It processes it as a potential existential threat.
But I want to look really closely at the specific words chosen here. Kinder or happier. I can imagine a parent reading this script and feeling like they're flat out lying to their kid.
Oh, absolutely. It feels uncomfortable.
Because if a couple is separating because of, I don't know, infidelity or because they constantly scream at each other, telling a toddler we are moving so we can be kinder, feels like gaslighting.
It does feel that way to the adult.
So why not just tell them the truth in simple terms?
Because the concept of the truth is highly subjective to a toddler's cognitive capacity. I mean, abstract adult conflicts, infidelity, financial ruin, severe incompatibility, those concepts literally do not exist in a 3-year-old's neural network.
So they can't even process the words.
Right. If you try to explain those mechanics, you are just introducing noise and panic.
Ah, I see.
To a toddler, kind and happy are foundational, tangible concepts. They know what a kind voice sounds like. They know what a happy face looks like.
So by tying the physical reality of different homes to the emotional goals of being kinder or happier, the parent translates a complex crisis into the safest possible emotional terms.
Exactly. You are speaking their language.
It really feels like emotional triage. As a parent in that moment, you aren't explaining the mechanics of a failing relationship. I mean, you aren't explaining the car crash. You're just applying pressure to stop the emotional bleeding.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And the immediate follow-up in the script reinforces that triage perfectly. But they still love their children very much.
You're establishing an anchor for them.
Precisely. The physical geography of the home is changing, but the love is stationary.
Because their biggest fear is being left behind, right?
That is the crucial mechanism of the script. The 3-year-old's primary terror is abandonment. If one parent leaves, the literal conclusion the toddler's brain jumps to is, well, they might leave me too.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is. So the script is designed to proactively sever that line of thinking right at the root.
It requires an immense amount of discipline for an adult who's going through the trauma of a divorce themselves to swallow their own context and just deliver that specific triage.
It's incredibly difficult.
But, physical reassurance really only works until the child's brain develops enough to start looking for a culprit. Which brings us to the next cognitive shift in the guide.
Right, around age 6.
Yeah, as a child moves toward age 6, they've socialized, they've been to school, they've acquired the specific vocabulary of the adult world.
And more importantly, their understanding of causality has evolved.
Okay, what does that mean in this context?
It means they are no longer just observing that things happen. They are actively trying to figure out why things happen. They are connecting dots.
And we definitely see that shift in the text. The child's question changes from asking about physical presence to asking about the event itself. The 6-year-old asks, why do people get divorced?
The word is finally introduced.
Yes. And the parent's script shifts dramatically in response. The text advises the parent to say, sometimes adults have problems they cannot solve together. Divorce is a decision adults make, never because of the child.
And the explicit instruction given to the parent in this section is vital. The guide says they must explicitly remove child guilt.
This is where I want to dig into the psychology, because the shift in tone here is massive.
It really is night and day.
Right. At 3, it was just, we still love you. At 6, it's a very direct, pointed, this is not your fault. It suggests that a 6-year-old naturally assumes they are to blame.
We do.
But are kids at that age really that inherently narcissistic?
Oh.
Why is their first instinct to take the blame for an adult decision?
Well, it isn't narcissism in the adult sense. It's a fundamental developmental stage known as egocentrism.
Okay.
At 6 years old, a child's theory of mind is still under construction.
Theory of mind.
Yeah, basically, they literally lack the cognitive perspective-taking required to fully understand that other people have internal lives, motivations, and conflicts that are entirely separate from them.
Oh, wow. So they really think everything revolves around them.
To a 6-year-old, they are the absolute center of the causal universe.
So if they're the center of the universe, every effect must be traced back to them as the cause.
Exactly. It's a false logic puzzle that their brain creates. If the parents are angry and splitting up, the 6-year-old brain automatically sifts through its own recent actions to find the cause.
Like, I didn't clean my room.
Yes. I yelled at my sister, I made them mad, and now they are breaking up.
It's an illusion of control. If they caused it, maybe they can fix it. But man, that is a crushing amount of weight for a kid to carry.
Which is exactly why the script has to act as a definitive intercept.
You can't just imply it.
No, you cannot imply their innocence. You cannot assume they will just figure out they didn't cause it. The instruction to explicitly remove child guilt requires the parent to look the child in the eye and state a definitive boundary.
Divorce is a decision adults make never because of the child.
Exactly. You are manually severing that false connection of cause and effect in their brain.
That makes total sense. And, the other half of that script for the 6-year-old is just as striking to me. Sometimes adults have problems they cannot solve together.
Yeah, that's a big admission.
It is. Up until this age, a child usually views their parents as basically omnipotent. They fix the broken toys, they know all the answers.
Right. They are superheroes.
Exactly. So introducing the idea that mom and dad have a problem they are entirely incapable of solving, doesn't that seem like it would shatter the child's worldview? Isn't there a risk of traumatizing the kid by admitting that the adults are failing?
It certainly demystifies the parents, which, can be unsettling, but it is a necessary psychological step.
Oh, so?
By framing the divorce as a problem they cannot solve, the parent achieves two things. First, it scales the abstract monster of divorce down into a recognizable concept.
Oh, right, because a 6-year-old knows what a problem is.
Exactly. They face problems at school or with puzzles, and sometimes problems just don't have solutions.
Wait a second.
Second, it reinforces the removal of guilt.
Oh, because if the all-powerful adults couldn't solve it.
Precisely. If the adults cannot solve this problem, then the 6-year-old certainly couldn't have caused it and absolutely cannot be expected to fix it.
Wow, that's brilliant.
It closes the case for the child's internal detective work. It shifts the burden of the failure entirely into the adult realm, while still treating the child with enough cognitive respect to say, hey, we have limits.
That is such a delicate balance. You're systematically dismantling their false sense of responsibility.
Exactly.
But eventually, I guess a child realizes the issue isn't just that mom and dad are fallible individuals. They begin to see the parents as interacting parts of a larger system. And that brings us to the final developmental leap outlined in the text, the 9-year-old.
Yes, and at this stage, the prefrontal cortex is far more developed.
So they can handle more complex logic.
The cognitive capacity for systemic thinking has fully come online. They aren't just looking at independent actors anymore. They are analyzing the dynamic between them.
And the question the 9-year-old asks in the text remains exactly the same as the 6-year-old. Why do people get divorced? But the parent script matures significantly.
It changes completely.
The text advises, relationships can become unhealthy, unhappy, or too difficult to continue. Sometimes separating helps families create a calmer life. And the guide specifically notes here that older children understand relationship complexity much more deeply.
The vocabulary shift here is just profound. We move from the 6-year-old's problem we cannot solve to the 9-year-old's relationship that has become unhealthy.
That word unhealthy really caught my attention when reading this.
Why is that?
Well, it feels like we were moving from explaining a broken toy at age 6 to explaining a broken ecosystem at age 9.
That's a great analogy.
Right. We are finally, for the first time in this whole source text, giving the child the actual why behind the adult's decision. But again, I have to question the assumption here. Does a 9-year-old really grasp an abstract concept like an unhealthy relationship?
They absolutely do, even if they can't articulate it like a couples therapist.
Really?
Yes. Your broken ecosystem analogy is perfect. By 9 years old, children are incredibly perceptive barometers of household tension.
They pick up on the vibes.
Exactly. They possess a high degree of emotional intelligence regarding their environment. They hear the tone of voice. They notice the heavy silences. They know when the atmosphere in the ecosystem is toxic.
So you can't use the 3-year-old script anymore.
No, absolutely not.
You can't tell a 9-year-old, we're going to live in different houses to be kinder. The 9-year-old have all the data.
Yeah.
They'll look at you and say, you haven't been kind to each other in a year.
Exactly. If you try to sanitize the truth for a 9-year-old, you risk alienating them because they know what they're observing.
They'll feel like you're lying to them.
Yes. And that is why the phrase, create a calmer life, is the fulcrum of this final script. By acknowledging that the current dynamic is unhealthy or too difficult, the parent is actively validating the 9-year-old's lived reality.
It's essentially telling the kid, you aren't crazy. What you have been sensing in this house is real. The tension is real.
And that validation is crucial.
That has to be an enormous relief. To have the confusing, stressful reality of their daily life actually acknowledged by the adults who are creating it.
It is deeply validating for them. But the script does something even more important here. It introduces the concept of boundaries.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, it doesn't just validate the negative atmosphere, it frames the act of separating as a proactive tool to achieve a positive outcome, a calmer life.
Oh, I see. It's teaching them that a relationship isn't a life sentence if it becomes toxic.
Exactly.
You are treating the 9-year-old almost as a fellow observer of the human condition. When the script says relationships can become unhealthy, it's stating a universal principle, not just a specific fact about mom and dad.
Right. It equips the child with a framework for their own future relationships. It's teaching them that walking away to find peace is a valid, healthy choice.
That is huge.
It's the ultimate goal of communication at this developmental stage. You are giving them the tools to process the mechanics of human dynamics.
Let's summarize this because it's brilliant. The 3-year-old just needs to know they are physically safe.
Right.
The 6-year-old needs to know they aren't the villain.
Yes.
But the 9-year-old needs to understand the ecosystem itself so they can process the reality of their environment.
Exactly. When you step back and look at all three of these scripts side by side, the through line is incredibly clear.
It's a master narrative of cognitive and emotional scaffolding.
Yes, the source text perfectly illustrates how communicating a hard truth has to evolve. You build the foundation of physical safety and love first.
And
Then, as the child's brain develops the capacity for causal thinking, you explicitly clear away the debris of false guilt. And finally, as they gain the capacity for systemic observation, you acknowledge the complex, sometimes unhealthy realities of human relationships.
it really highlights a broader philosophy of communication that extends way beyond parenting.
It applies to everything. Empathy isn't merely about feeling what someone else is feeling. True empathy is the rigorous work of speaking in a way that the listener's mind is actually capable of processing in that exact moment.
And that is the massive takeaway for you listening to this deep dive right now.
Absolutely.
Even if you aren't currently explaining a divorce to a child or never have to, this text serves as a universal blueprint for how to adjust any difficult message.
Think about how we communicate in our own lives, right?
Yeah. If you are delivering bad news to a team at work or having a really painful conversation with a friend, the core principle remains identical. You have to tailor the delivery to the emotional and cognitive state of the person receiving it.
You have to ask yourself where they are at.
Exactly. Are they in triage mode right now? Do they just need reassurance? Do they need to know it's not their fault? Or are they ready to analyze the complex reality of the situation?
Because if you hand someone the complex, systemic truth when their limbic system is screaming for basic reassurance, you aren't communicating, you are just overwhelming them.
Right. You are handing them a translation app that's outputting a dialect they literally haven't learned yet.
Precisely. But you know, there's another layer to this text that I think is worth exploring as we wrap up today. Something for you to consider regarding your own life.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
We spent a lot of time analyzing that final script for the 9-year-old, the one that clearly articulates that relationships can become too difficult to continue.
Right, the broken ecosystem.
Right. The script guides the parent to teach the child that walking away from an unhealthy dynamic is a perfectly valid, necessary method for creating a calmer life.
Yeah, and we view that as a profound, healthy lesson to impart to a kid who is caught in a toxic environment.
It teaches them to value their own peace.
Yes, exactly.
So the question we have to ask ourselves is this. If we can so clearly recognize the wisdom of guiding a 9-year-old to understand that peace is a valid pursuit,
Oh, I think I see where you're going with this.
and that stepping away from toxicity is sometimes the only way to achieve it. How often do we as adults completely fail to apply that exact same logic to ourselves?
Wow. That is a genuinely uncomfortable truth to sit with.
It really is, isn't it?
We spend all this energy trying to perfectly curate these scripts for children, making sure they understand that they don't have to endure an unhealthy ecosystem forever. We want them to know they deserve a calmer life.
But then look at what we do.
Right. We will sit in a toxic workplace or a draining friendship or a failing relationship for years, completely forgetting that the rule applies to us too.
We master the art of translating the truth for the developing mind, but we completely ignore the translation when it applies to our own well-being.
It really brings the whole deep dive full circle. Translating the language of a massive emotional truth isn't just a high-stakes challenge when you're talking to a toddler or a 9-year-old.
No, it's not.
Sometimes the absolute hardest translation you will ever have to do is the one you have to deliver to yourself.